Hello and welcome to my trackblazer start of the climax sort of walkthrough talk through. I made this guide and I shared it to my club. It's really just an accumulation of pretty common knowledge, just generally what the game mechanics are that are new to trackblazer. I do plan on making a second video where I kind of play through the game and actually like talk through choices that I'm making and everything. I'm obviously going to be playing it in JP, so I wanted to talk a little bit in detail about what some of the game mechanics are now so that I don't end up spending a lot of time explaining them during the career that I'm running, because I'd also like to try to record myself and try to show how long a career actually takes. Because I think there's a lot of talk about how long it's going to take. It will take longer than Unity, especially the first few times you do it. So I do think it's important to kind of give a realistic idea of what somebody who's not super like JP veteran, comfortable with it, but has played at least a few careers, how fast I can go through it. I'm generally pretty quick about my Unity playthroughs, but obviously there's more to think about during a trackblazer playthrough. Background here for me, I've been playing for a few months now, obviously, in the global server. But in JP, I actually only just started in the beginning of the 5th anniversary, which is the beginning of, or like end of last month, beginning of this month, kind of roughly. I think it was end of last month. So it's been a couple weeks that I've been on the JP server, but really my card selection is pretty low. My actual experience with any of the scenarios is pretty low. I've just played through trackblazer and the brand new scenario, as well as URA and Unity. I've done a couple of runs in JP just to kind of familiarize with it. I don't personally speak Japanese fluently, so in my playthrough that will take me some extra time to figure out what skills do and stuff, so we're gonna just pretend I know what they are when I go through that playthrough. I won't talk about that in too much, but I will bring it up a little bit if I'm going to bring something up in that playthrough. If you have additional questions and you're in my club, please ask in the appropriate channel in Discord, and I will try to add it to the conversation that we're having in a future video. Otherwise, if you're on YouTube and you're not part of my club, feel free to make a comment below. If you do happen to see this and you have questions or anything that I could maybe include in a future video or respond to in the comment section in YouTube. In the meantime, like I said, this is just going to be an overview of the actual new mechanics involved. So let's excuse the fact that my slideshow isn't working properly when I do an actual presentation, so I am going to have to just scroll through it. So what are the main goals in trackblazer? I'm going to try not to read verbatim what it says on here, so feel free to pause to read. Basically, I'm going to talk about the same things that are on the screen. So just like it says on here, each UMA's career is replaced with the new trackblazer goals. That's basically, in my opinion, makes it almost impossible to lose the career as long as you're doing any races at all. So the new thing is these points. You'll see the amount of points you have in the upper left hand of your screen right below the date. In this particular instance, it's like turn 1, so I have 0 points or anything like that. The goals are 60, 300, 300. That might sound intimidating, jumping up to 300. However, each race, the G1, 2, 3, and OP races have different amounts of points that they give you. The least amount you get is during your debut race, which is 10, and the most you get is 80. So you can see how doing a single G1 race, such as like the Hopeful Stakes or something like that, will be enough to get you through your junior year. I don't recommend that for a lot of reasons, but we'll get into that later. And you can see if it's 80, then we're looking at like 4 or 5 races for your classic and senior years. These are not unobtainable. You already probably do at least 4 to 5 races in those years in Unity or URA, or more if you're used to doing things like fan runs. So these are pretty normal things. Another thing that I didn't really take a picture of in the UI is as soon as you're done with a race, it will fill up that bar, basically saying like 0 to 100 or 300 or whatever the goal is, and it'll fill it up to the, let's say, 80 points you got from that G1 race. In the next slide, I talk about the first 11 turns. So basically, as far as I'm aware, in every scenario, the first 11 turns are pretty much the same. They are the turn 1 to junior debut. I will say though, just like it says on this slide, you do upgrade your facilities and based on how many times you've clicked on it, just like in the URA scenario. There are other ways to upgrade your facility, what we'll talk about later, but right now, during that first 11 turns, it's just through clicking on it. You might think, what's the point? We're doing so many races, I'm never going to train. You are going to train, and when you train, you want those clicks to be valuable. You're going to want your training clicks to be worth more in skill points than racing. And when you're running a deck that has like 50 to 60 race bonus, you're getting anywhere from like around I think it's like 13 to 16 or 17 depending on how high your race bonus actually is. I have it written down somewhere, but I don't have it in front of me what that ratio is. But the long and short of it is you're going to want to make sure you're getting at least like 20 skill points off of that click. How do you make sure that you have a leveled up facility ready for you to click on? So whether that's wit, speed, power, whatever you think you're going to be clicking on the most during that career, you're going to want to make sure it's leveled up. So during that first 11 turns, you're going to want to try to click on wit a few times just so you don't run out of energy. You don't have to rest as many times as possible, just like in every other scenario thing. And just like in the URA, you're going to in the URA scenario, you're going to want to be trying to click on things like speed early on so that later you have a level 2, 3, whatever facility that you can click on. So the end of the first 11 days, you want them to look just like this, where they have a decent amount of stats built up. Gray Cap has a 20% growth rate in speed and 10% in power, so this is a very realistic number to hit, especially with cards that have starting bonus in things like speed, so like a Fuku card or something. Obviously, my JP account is very new and has some odd cards in it, so I think this looks really realistic either way. So you want to end with high energy, high mood, just like every other scenario, if you can. Optimally, your last turn will look like this. Why do we race so much? So this is a question that is on everybody's mind. How much do you race? Why do you race so much? So here's the answer to that question. There are 2 new things added to every race. That is the points that we already talked about. This is the junior debut. That's why it's all in Japanese. All you need to know that it's a mile turf race. It's Ogre Cap's junior debut race, right? You get 10 points for that, and it says 10 points with that little star there. The other thing you'll notice is the green coins with a fan on them. That is a fan, not a seashell. Those are fan coins or for your shop, right? So every race gives you 100 coins as far as I'm aware. So it does not benefit you more or less as far as coins are concerned to pick the G1 over the G2. If you have a higher chance of winning the G2, take the G2 if all you want is coins. Obviously, you still get more points for it in those little scenario points to finish the goals. If it's a G1, and you also get more stats out of it if it's a G1. So I'm not saying overlook all G1s or their G1s are worthless and you still want to complete your epithets and your high affinities and stuff like that, but long story short, G2s and 3s become more valuable because they still give you 100 coins. The next thing that pops up as soon as you're done with your debut is going to be the shop. Don't mind that my Gray Cap did manage to lose her make debut. So she only got 60 coins instead of 100. It's like one of the only races that it is, as far as I know, the only race that you cannot clock, at least in the JP server, because it's not required to win. I don't know. You just can't clock and make debut, apparently, if you lose your debut race. But anyway, so in this case, there are 2 locations that immediately show up as soon as you're done with your debut race. You'll notice in the previous slide, the next to the race button, there was a grayed out thing, or I don't remember if I showed it or not. That does become unlocked now. After this pop-up shows up, the green button would take you to the shop. The gray button would not. It's just like continue or close, right? On the small button, which is kind of hard to see, blurry in that screenshot, that is next to the race button. It'll show you how many coins you have before even opening the shop. So right now you can see that I had 60 coins because I lost my debut race, but regardless, we will talk about the items, I think, in the next slide. So when you open it up, there is going to be a list of items. They're all going to have like little up-down arrows next to them. If you push the up arrow, It's like you're gonna buy it. I hope they have that mechanic when it comes out, and I hope they do it that way instead of making you individually click on each item, because it really saves time to be able to click on multiple items and click buy at once. So fingers crossed they do that. You can hold up to 5 items of each type. So, for example, if you had one of those energy bottles that's listed on my thing, you can hold up to 5 of them. If you can also hold 5 of those megaphones, etc. So it is not 5 total items. It is 5 of each individual item. So 5 cans of tuna, if you bought them, can sit in your inventory, or you can use them right away, which is what I recommend for certain items. As it said, some of them you want to have just available to you when you need to use them, and some of them you want to use as soon as you're done. You're generally the friends and effects one, the race buffs and training buffs, immune and energy. You kind of want a varying amount, like at least a couple of each kind. If you're in like a good run, you'll have those things. The books you're going to use right away, the friends and effects they're going to use right away. So the other 3 categories you're going to use. Friends and effects is sort of more like an other, because there's like one other thing that we'll talk about at the end that I didn't list here. So in the next section, I talk about your inventory. So there's a little new button. It would be right next to your see full stats or full stats button, which is above your skill points. That has a little bubble on it because I did buy 1 item in the previous menu. That bubble or that inventory thing does move around as well, so you can see it's the same kanji and everything on there. So when you go race or you go to train, that moves up to where the date is, because you can kind of see the date in the bottom there, at the bottom of the date there. So that does move around into new screens and everything. I'm sure it'll be hard to miss, especially after you buy an item and they have that big 1 on it. So make sure that you don't forget to use your race items that we'll talk about later. Don't forget to use your training items before you train and race. I think it's going to be easier to remember training items than race items. Next, I'm going to talk a little bit about turn flow, I think, in the next 2 slides. So basically, something that's going to really help increase your ability to get through a career quickly is going to be to kind of have a mental flow that you follow through. There's a lot of choices, so I think it's important that you open up a guide about what items do right next to you during your first few playthroughs, and just have that list. The list that I used later in this slideshow is right from GameTora, so I recommend, obviously, it has everything there, so definitely recommend that site. Or you could just save it somewhere, I don't know. But long story short, you want to have those items and what they do in front of you. I'm sure it'll tell you in-game, but that's going to make it a lot faster if you know sort of what you're looking for when you open that shop. The next thing is I'm going to talk about sort of a checklist. So generally, you want to do 3 things with every single turn, and that's going to be to check the training, check the shop, and check your races. So I think the biggest thing is when you check the shop, it's kind of controls your next turn quite a lot. Basically, yes, no on if there's anything in there that you want to buy, and yes, no on if you can afford it. If there's something in there and you can't afford it, it's time to race. A lot of people, veterans, call it being in debt. If there's nothing in there that you want to buy, then you may want to just train on that turn. Because if there's not a good training, you may still want to race, because when you race, it adds items to the shop. The shop refreshes every 6 days, so keep that in mind. It's the same rate as the Unity Cup trial. So in the first year, it does not refresh, because essentially the first few turns, the first 11 turns, and then it refreshes. And then, so that's the halfway point of the year, where summer camp would be, is the beginning of the end of your first 11 turns. And then it's going to go ahead and, not 6 turns, 6 months. And at the end of the year, it is going to refresh, right? And then, so that's where the Unity Cup thing would be. And then at the summer camp of, actually I think it is 6 turns, because it refreshes about halfway between then and summer camp. And then again, at summer camp, right? And then about halfway between summer camp and at the end of the year. So it is every 6 turns. It's about twice as often as Unity Cup. I misspoke. I'm sorry. And then again, the same rate in the following year. So when you're racing, if there's nothing in the shop, it will refresh in a few turns, or you can race and it'll add items to the shop. And that's usually between 1 and 4 items, somewhere in there. Um, I have not worked out personally what causes that to happen or if it's completely random. That might be somewhere on the internet that I can look into if that's a question. But for now, just assume that it's the same as getting a skill at the end of a Unity Cup race. It can happen. Um, Next, I want to talk about rival races. So now you've gone through your shop at the end of your 11 turns. You did your debut race. You shopped. You got what you wanted out of it. Now you're going to have a rival race. These rival races are hard to miss because, like I said in the thing, it has that rainbow flashing. It's less rainbow and more pink and blue, and it has the versus thing. It will have one Uma that is chosen to be your rival. Otherwise, it's functionally the same as any other race. Any race that your Uma has affinity in that is above a OP race, so G3 and up, will have the opportunity to be a rival race. So you'll get a lot of them. I mean, if you look through at every turn that has a G2 or 3 that your Uma has a affinity in, you'll see there's almost every turn there's going to be a rival race. You get skills from the rival race if you win. When you do that, you want to make sure that you're taking races that you're going to be using the bonus, that type of track. So if you're doing for dirt, make sure you at least pick up a few dirt races. If you're doing miles or whatever, make sure you do some mile races, right? And then also make sure that your Uma is running in the position you're going to use, because that is also a way that it definitely tracks. So if you are running something off like an gray cap end closer, make sure that she is in the end closing position, because then you will be given end closer skills like, for example, straightaway spurt. So that is the best way to get some of the more rare skills, like slick surge or straightaway cert, that type of stuff. Make sure they're in that position. If you're running your pace chaser in a late just because you don't want to have the same energy requirement or stamina requirements, then you're going to end up getting late surger skills. So make sure they're in the correct position. The next thing I want to talk about is buff stacking. I originally didn't want to talk too much about the different skills. I think that's a whole video in and of itself, but I will talk very briefly about each type of item. This is how it is categorized according to Game Torah. So these are more like, these are training effects, right? So namely, they do training bonus and for either just in general, flat, like the megaphones, or for a specific type of training. One of the notes I wanted to make is that the weights apply specifically to the training facility associated. So clicking on the speed weight and the power weight will then buff the speed training facility and separately the power training facility. However, clicking on the speed training facility, like if you do a power weight and you click on speed, it does not train more power. It's only if you click on the power training facility. Likewise, if you do both, you do speed and power, it doesn't stack in that way. Again, I don't think you can stack megaphones, but I could be wrong on that one. And also, just a side note about the bottom thing there, those charms, these are nice and cheap at only 40, and they are very, very worth your time, because in the weird, odd turns where you either don't have a race or you just have a really good training, and you have 0 energy and no energy items, they save you, or they just save you having to use an energy item and have to buy a whole nother item, because you can, even with 0 energy, have a 0 chance to fail. So you just get a free training in that turn. Books, again, want to talk about pretty briefly just the amount of coins spent per skill gain. It's pretty clear that the bigger the book, the more worth it. A lot of people say don't buy the small books because you're spending a whole 10 coins for 3 skill points. And that is, 5 would be the equivalent. It's like half, right, of what the final book gets you, with 30 to 15. Whereas 3 is less than half of what you spent. So the same for the 15, it's about half of what you spent, so it ends up being a lot more worth it for those middle books. So I agree with most people who say don't buy small books, buy big books. Always buy books unless you are already capping out that skill. Like if you already have speed capped, obviously don't buy a speed book. Upgrading facilities and then race and fan bonus. Again, I don't think the two different race bonus things stack, so make sure you also want to try to have at least 3 hammers by the end of your career, whether they are gold or silver, preferably gold, because that's when you're going to get a big bonus to every stat. So let's say you had, 55 in that in your race bonus, that bumps you up to like 60 or 65, and that bumps it up to 17 in every stat if you're at 65. So it is absolutely worth having those little things. It does add obviously more than 10, so it might even be higher than that 17 that I said. But it is worth grabbing those for the amount of stats you get, especially at the end of the career. But in general, if you have them, use them. Once you have 3 of them, use them freely on every G1 that you race on, as long as you keep 3 in your inventory. And I always say buy them if you can afford them. Fan gain is a little less worth it unless you're doing a fan run or you have NTR. At least early on, you can grab a lot of fans and get NTR online a lot faster. So those are kind of worth it for that. And then the training facilities are expensive, but as stated before, having a leveled up facility does help you out in the long run. So, for example, if there is one that is very worth it, it might be worth those 2 races just to be able to afford that upgraded training facility. However, if you is in a facility you're not going to click on, let's say you're not doing the guts build and it's in guts, don't worry about it, right? If you're not worried about getting your stamina facility up, don't worry about it, right? Because they're expensive, it's not worth buying just because they're there. But if it's a facility you're going to click on, it may be worth it. It's very situational. The whistle is the final item on this list, and basically they just re-roll where other UMAs are, like your support UMAs are, on the training facilities, which means that if you have a dud turn on summer, you have a chance of it not being a dud if you whistle. So a lot of people say they're worth it. They're only 20 coins. I think they're worth it. They're easy to actually end up with 5 of in your inventory because they're so cheap and you buy them every time. So the next thing is the fixing debuffs items. These ones fix every debuff that you can think of, and then the final one does any debuff, which is hot sauce. I personally think there are only 2 items that are a must buy when you see them, and that is the rough skin debuff removal and hot sauce. And if you have the debuffer thing in your shop when you have the debuff, so let's say you pull up to the shop and you already have Night Owl, which is insomnia on this thing, then you should buy that. But if you don't have it, don't buy it just in case. But hot sauce is going to fix any of those, so it's worth it. Obviously, it's more expensive than the other ones, so that is something to keep in mind as well. If you already have a hot sauce, it may not be worth getting multiple. If you already have rough skin heal, it may not be worth it. Rough skin, if you don't know, is the condition you get if you race 3, 4, 5 times in a row. And so it's very common to get. It's probably one of the items that is going to be one of the most used as far as debuffs are concerned anyway. So that's why they're worth buying right away. And then the second to final one is positive conditions. It's the opposite of debuffs. It gives you a positive condition. A lot of people are really excited about the Charming Mirror. A lot of people are really excited about the Fast Learner hat. The other 2 are a lot less worth it. So Practice Perfect is not worth it because if you are training a lot, enough for that Practice Perfect to pay off, essentially, you're not racing enough. And then Rising Star is bringing up that the friendship with the director and the reporter and that kind of thing. And while those bonuses at the end are nice, it's not really, again, you're not training a lot, so it's hard to make sure that those friendships are up, you know? And then as far as Charming and the Fast Learner cap are concerned, so the first thing you'll notice is that the Fast Learner cap is the most expensive thing on this list. Like, it's very expensive. And I want you to keep in mind how much we're racing. You probably have done a fan run before. If you haven't, then feel free to take a look at my Tamama Cross run that I did also on my channel. Just skip to the end and you can see just how many skills I was able to buy, how many skill points I had. So I would say most fan runs that you do probably less races than you would do in trackblazer is going to be easily if not at a 3,000, then close to 3,000 skill points, which is going to be a lot of skills. So it's like, is Fast Learner worth it? Potentially, but you might just run out of skills to buy with that many skill points. So that is really expensive for you to maybe not get a whole lot worth. Now, if you are trying to min-max and get the highest rank possible, get UG plus, right? Then yes, Fast Learner is where you're going to be. But at the end of the day, some of those skills are just like, you can buy the most important skills with 2,000 to 3,000 skill points, I promise. And then Charming, again, 150 is very expensive, and you're not going to be training a whole lot. So I think there is a case to be made for buying the Charming Mirror, and there's a case to be made for not buying the Charming Mirror, and I think that is a personal decision that you have to make on your own. But at the end of the day, I will say, do not buy the Charming Mirror past classic year inspiration. If you're past that point, hopefully you're already getting people up to that amount. Then the energy, pretty much buy all these items except the energy drinks. Max energy is not as worth it as you'd think. Pretty much as long as you can get your energy up to high enough that you won't fail, or you have one of those charms, you are solid. You don't need to have more than 100 energy. Alright, and then so finally, in summary, I think that it's definitely going to shake the game up. Like I said in this thing, I think that it's definitely going to change a lot and give you a lot more choices to make in Unity. But I think that it will take less time than people are amping it up to be. I know there are people who say that Unity Cup takes them like over an hour to do, and I think at that point it's mostly down to them not doing much as far as micro decision management, turn flow. I think that it might be just a lack of experience, potentially making those quick decisions, or they might not just have those rules for themselves in their head. Like, for example, I always buy in trackblazer, it might be I always buy this item. It might be I don't take a trading unless it's under this percent. It might be I always hit this race, and having that agenda already set up. Those types of things are really going to cut time from your career, and then basically it ends up being a yes/no question and not a what do I do question. So I do think that those types of things are really going to help you reduce the amount of time you're spending on each particular career. But I think also just experience helps trim that down, because when you know what all the items do, you're not stopping to look at what a chart says about them. And so I think familiarizing yourself right away with those items, or having that chart already open for the first one or two playthroughs, and then making sure that you take your time to learn it. And even if that takes you 2+ hours just to get through the first ever time going through the career, it will help reduce that time after that first time. It'll help you get that time down to probably a slightly long Unity Cup career time. And I think that's the real takeaway too, is that there are Unity Cup times. Like I said, people are saying they take an hour and a half on a Unity Cup time, and I think that's very long. Maybe that's like I'm reading the story long, in my opinion. Like anything over 2 hours, I'm reading all of the Uma's story. So I think, yes, you're allowed to read the Uma story and all that stuff, and I do think you should enjoy the story, but I think that if you're worried about it taking a long time, the big thing is make sure you have that flow. Make sure you have those decisions made. And that's something that we could talk about in the future, too, in more detail, about, like, micro decisions to make in each turn, but I think that's something I'll talk a little bit more about in the video that I make in the future, where I record myself. So hopefully this has been a little bit helpful, a little bit demystifying about what's going on in trackblazer. I don't want this video to go on much longer because I think it's just going to take a hot minute to edit already. So I hope, again, that this is helpful. If you have questions and you're solely on YouTube, please leave a comment. I will be happy to either include it in a future video or reply in the comment section. If you're in my club, please ask in the appropriate channel, and I'd be happy to answer there, or again, add it to a future video. So otherwise, I hope you guys have a wonderful night, and hope all your runs go great.